The warm, sugary scent of the cake, frosted in delicate swirls of white and gold, was supposed to be a gesture of goodwill. I'd put hours into perfecting it. After all, my sister was about to get engaged. I had worked day and night, getting the recipe just right, carefully arranging the flowers, and watching it slowly transform into something beautiful. It was $1,200, yes. But I was more than happy to do it. She was family, after all. As I arrived at her house, the sun was setting, casting a soft orange glow over everything. There was a soft hum of music coming from inside, and I could hear the laughter of people enjoying themselves. I stood there for a moment, cake in hand, breathing in the scent of the night and trying to steady my nerves. I'd never been to a family gathering like this in a long time. Not since things between Rebecca and me fell apart. I tried to shove the thoughts down, to focus on the present. But they kept bubbling up, the moment years ago when everything had changed. I rang the doorbell. My heart beat faster as the door swung open. Rebecca stood there, a smile plastered on her face, the sparkle of engagement still fresh in her eyes. But there was something about it. Something hollow. "Hey," she said, her tone polite, but cold. "Thanks for bringing the cake." I handed it to her, feeling the weight of it suddenly heavier in my hands. Of course. I wanted to make sure it was perfect. "For you." Her eyes flickered to the cake, then quickly back to me, and that's when it hit me, the tension. She wasn't happy to see me. Not the way she should have been. "So, I'm gonna go ahead and head in," I said, trying to keep it light, but something about her stiff posture told me it wasn't going to be that simple. She hesitated, and for a split second, I thought she might invite me in, might say something like, "Hey, thanks for the cake, your family." But instead, she took a step back, holding the door open just a little wider, as if giving me an option I knew wasn't really an option at all. "Actually," she said, her voice tight, "I think it's best if you don't stay. I don't want to make things awkward." My heart dropped. My throat went dry. I blinked, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. "Don't stay? I wasn't invited? You're serious?" I finally croaked out, my voice unsteady. I brought you this cake, Rebecca." She nodded, her expression flickering with something, regret? Guilt, but it was gone before I could make sense of it. "I know, but things have changed. It's just better this way." My world felt like it was spinning, and for a moment, I thought I might just drop the cake and walk out. This wasn't happening. Not after everything. I clenched my fists, trying to hold myself together. "Don't break down here. Don't let her see you crumble." But my mind was racing, replaying everything that had led to this moment. The Thanksgiving years ago. The words that were never spoken. The betrayal that she still hadn't realized had scarred me. "You're really doing this?" My voice cracked, the words heavy with hurt. I swallowed, but it did nothing to stop the burn behind my eyes. She bit her lip, eyes avoiding mine. "It's just, things got complicated after that Thanksgiving, okay? I don't want to make a scene. Let's not go there." "Complicated?" I echoed bitterly, the taste of the word bitter in my mouth. "You believe him over me? You believed him when he told you I was the one trying to get with him?" She flinched. "You don't understand." She stopped, looking more uncomfortable by the second. "I couldn't risk losing him, okay? I didn't want to lose everything." The truth hit me like a slap. It wasn't about me at all. It had never been. "You didn't want to lose him, but you were willing to lose me." "Your sister," I whispered, the hurt evident in my voice. Just like that. The words were out, and I could feel my heart cracking, like glass shattering. How could she do this to me? How could she let everything fall apart so easily? I didn't know Rebecca began, but her voice was shaky. She couldn't finish the sentence. I had to leave. I couldn't stay here, not anymore. This wasn't a party, it was a reminder of everything I had lost. I turned and walked down the porch steps, the weight of everything pressing down on me with each step. The door shut softly behind me, but I couldn't erase the sound of it slamming shut in my mind. That was it. The end. But it wasn't just the end of that night. It was the end of a relationship, the end of a sisterhood that had once meant the world to me. I had always hoped, maybe naively hoped, that things would fix themselves. That someday, Rebecca would remember that we were family. That she would come to me, ask for the cake, and at least pretend to be the sister I once knew. But no. It was clear now. She wasn't coming back. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but it stuck. I had given everything to her, my time, my love, my trust, and this is how she repaid me. By cutting me out. By believing lies. And all I could do was walk away, empty-handed and heartbroken. I'd had enough. Every year, it was the same tired ritual, the forced smiles, the surface-level conversations, the pretense of closeness. But this time, I just couldn't do it. I was done playing the part, pretending to be part of a family I didn't feel connected to anymore. So, I skipped the annual party. Stayed home. I didn't care about appearances, not the way I used to. It wasn't that I was indifferent, well, maybe I was a little, but more than anything, I was exhausted. Exhausted from pretending for the sake of everyone else's comfort. My mother? She was furious. Her disappointment was palpable, like a heavy weight that hung in the air every time she looked at me. But my dad? He didn't seem to care. Not one bit. And my sister, well, I wasn't sure how she felt. She never really showed much of anything. But I knew one thing for sure, she didn't miss me. At least, not enough to acknowledge it. The pictures from the party showed her smiling, enjoying the evening like nothing had changed, and that just made it easier for her to act like I wasn't even there. But skipping her son's birthday? That was the last straw. After that, she blocked me on every platform imaginable. And honestly, I was fine with it. We'd never really been friends anyway. It was all a facade, and I'd finally stopped pretending. She'd made it clear for years that the only reason we were even invited to each other's events was because of our mothers, who insisted on us playing nice for the sake of family unity. But there was no real bond between us. That was clear. Months passed. Weddings. Family events. I attended because I had to, but each encounter with her felt colder, more distant. The once awkward, forced greetings were gone. There were no polite hellos anymore, just silence. And, honestly, I didn't care. She didn't want me there, and I had long stopped hoping for anything to change. I'd given up on ever having a good relationship with her. Then, out of nowhere, she unblocked me. It was a few weeks ago, and when I saw the notification, I thought maybe, just maybe, she was ready to talk. Ready to address the mess we'd made of things. I didn't expect an apology. I didn't even want one. But I thought maybe she'd acknowledge it, the years of tension, the distance, the unspoken hurt. But instead of a heartfelt message or even a simple let's talk, all I got was a cold, businesslike demand. I need a 5-tier cake for my engagement party this weekend. Let me know the price tonight. It was jarring. And rude. But, of course, I couldn't just ignore it. This was business. And that's how I treated it, professionally. The price was set. I wasn't going to discount it just because she was family. I explained everything to her, the complexity of the cake, the short notice, the discount I was already offering. Her response? That's way too much. Lower the price. I stared at the message for a long moment, disbelief creeping in. This was my sister, the one who hadn't spoken to me in months, the one who'd blocked me on everything, and now she was negotiating a cake price. After all this time? But I held my ground. The price was fair. I wasn't going to lose money on this, and she wasn't going to take advantage of me just because we shared a last name. We went back and forth a bit, but in the end, she accepted the price. And so, I went ahead with the order. It was complicated, elaborate, and time-consuming. But I made it happen. 2 days ago, I delivered the cake. My assistant and I arrived early, about half an hour before the guests were due to arrive. Rebecca was there, waiting. She looked over the cake, and I saw the faintest hint of appreciation in her eyes. She said she was happy with it, and for a moment, I thought maybe things could be okay. Maybe, just maybe, we were starting to find our way back to some semblance of civility. But that moment was short-lived. When my assistant left, I stayed behind. I figured I could hang around for a few minutes. After all, I was family. The event was for her, but I was part of that world, too, right? I'd spent the last few days making sure everything was perfect. We even had some nice conversations about the cake. Surely, that meant something. Apparently not. As the first few guests started arriving, Rebecca turned to me. There was a brief, pregnant silence before she spoke. "What are you still waiting for?" I blinked, confused. I didn't say anything, just stood there, awkwardly watching her eyes narrow as if she were sizing me up. Then she spoke again. "Thanks for the cake. But you're not actually invited to the party. This is just a business thing, so it'd be best if you left. We don't need people wondering if we're fixing our relationship or not, especially not today. It's not the time for that." Her words hit me like a slap. I stood there, frozen, trying to process the insult. She was asking me to leave. Not just politely suggesting it, but ordering me to go. I felt the color rise to my cheeks, anger and humiliation mixing together in a toxic swirl. All the old resentment, years of it, came rushing back. I hadn't been invited. I'd been used. I bit back the urge to say something sharp, something cutting. Instead, I nodded stiffly, gathering my things. "No problem," I muttered, though every fiber of my being screamed to make her feel just a fraction of the hurt she'd caused me. But I didn't. I just turned and walked away, the sting of her words echoing in my chest. The door closed behind me, and I was left standing outside, the sounds of her party muffled behind the thick walls. As I drove away, I realized something. I didn't need her. Not anymore. And she? Well, I guess she was never going to be the person I hoped she'd be. I stood there, frozen. Her words, cold, dismissive, echoed in my ears. "I didn't want you there." That was the final jab. Her voice cut through the room like a blade, sharp and merciless. It was like she had planned it all. I could feel my chest tighten, my stomach turning. Humiliated, small, like I didn't even exist. The anger swelled up inside me, but I bit it back, fighting to stay composed. I almost left. I should have. But then, just as I was about to storm out, I saw my parents entering, oblivious to the storm inside me. They didn't notice me standing there, leaning against the wall, feeling as if I were invisible. I can't blame them for it. But in that moment, it set something off inside me. Why didn't they see me? Why was I always the one left behind? I had baked that cake for Rebecca, poured my heart into it, and she had turned it into a weapon. And now she was parading around like she had all the power. I couldn't just stand there anymore. Not after everything I'd done for her, the countless hours I had spent making everything perfect for her. The least she could have done was acknowledge me. But no. Instead, she acted like I wasn't even family. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside, but it was no use. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let her treat me like that. Not anymore. I grabbed the nearest glass of wine, not caring that it splashed over the edge as I marched towards the center of the room. I could feel every pair of eyes shifting toward me as I stood there, heart racing, a cocktail of adrenaline and rage coursing through my veins. "Everyone, I have something to say," I announced, the words coming out sharper than I intended. The room fell silent. The faces staring back at me were a mixture of shock and disbelief. No one expected me to be the one to speak out. Especially not after everything that had happened between Rebecca and me. The family knew, everyone knew, the tension we shared. But I couldn't stay quiet. I had to say it. I glanced at Rebecca, sitting at the back, mouthing shut up as if that would stop me. Well, it wouldn't. Not now. I started slow, telling them how once, we'd been close, friends even. How everything had been fine until one day she suddenly became jealous of me, just like that. Like a switch flipped, and she started being cruel for no reason at all. I told them about the Thanksgiving dinner incident, how she'd stopped talking to me because of a stupid fight with her then boyfriend. A fight that didn't even last. But it was enough for her to cut me out, just like that. And then, there was the birthday party. The one I didn't attend because she couldn't even be bothered to send me an invite. That hit me harder than I let on. Her friends had even talked about it, mocking me, throwing jabs about how I didn't deserve a piece of her special day. I had let it slide. But now, I wasn't backing down. I went out of my way for you, Rebecca, I said, my voice trembling with anger. I didn't have to do that. But I did it because I thought we were family. But you didn't even have the decency to pay me for the cake after everything I did. I treated you like family, and you just turned it into another slap in the face. The room was dead silent, everyone watching in stunned silence. I felt the weight of their gazes, but I didn't care. At that moment, I was done caring. I've been holding this in for years, and now I'm done. You can keep your fake smiles and your engagement party that I wasn't even invited to. You don't deserve anything from me. I felt a rush of heat flood my face, and my body shook with the force of my emotions. Without waiting for any reaction, I stormed out, pushing through the crowd, the sound of the door slamming behind me like a final exclamation mark. I drove back to my store, my mind a whirlwind. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. I shut off my phone, blocking everything out, hoping the silence would somehow calm me. But as the hours passed, my anger began to settle, and a strange emptiness took over. When I finally checked my phone later that night, I expected messages of support from my parents, but instead, I found something else. Something I wasn't prepared for. They didn't side with me. Not at all. I couldn't believe it. They both thought I was unprofessional, that I had crossed the line. That I had ruined Rebecca's night, her engagement party. My mother, my father, both of them, my parents, said I should apologize. They said I shouldn't have aired our dirty laundry in front of everyone. My father, of all people, said I should have waited until the event was over to confront her. I should have let it go. I should have stayed quiet. I was stunned, gutted. How could they not see what she had done to me? But no, they couldn't get past my actions. Not once did they ask how I felt. And so, I snapped. I called them. The second they answered, I unleashed everything I'd been holding back. You want me to apologize to her? I shouted, my voice breaking. After everything she's done to me, you want me to apologize? I can't do that. Not now. Not ever. I heard my father's disappointed sigh. He tried to reason with me, but it was too much. The anger burned brighter, and I didn't care anymore. That night, the silence that followed was unbearable. Days passed without a word from my parents. It was as if I had become a stranger in my own family. Maybe I had done something wrong. Maybe I should have just kept my mouth shut. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Rebecca had never truly cared. She'd only seen me as a service. A business transaction. But my family, they were supposed to see me. To stand by me. So, I made a decision. I'd apologize. It wasn't for her. No, it was for them. 5 days passed since the chaos of the party, and I couldn't let it go. I wasn't doing it because Rebecca deserved it, but because I couldn't lose my parents over this. Not over a cake, not over her. The day I was finally ready to apologize, my dad called me. The words that came out of his mouth made my heart stop. I'm sorry, he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I shouldn't have reacted the way I did. Your mother and we didn't handle it well. I froze. Could this really be happening? Had they finally come around? For the first time in days, I felt like there might be a way forward. But I knew this wouldn't be the end. Not by a long shot. The wounds I'd opened were deep, and the road ahead was murky. But I was willing to face it, even if it meant swallowing my pride. It had been days, but the memory of that moment still churned in my stomach. My parents had always been the ones to keep things proper, always trying to sweep the mess under the rug for the sake of appearances. And as much as I hated to admit it, I had let them. I had let them think that I could just brush off the way Rebecca had treated me. But that day, at her engagement party, something snapped. I had felt like an outsider, invisible in my own skin. And when she tossed me aside with those cold words, "You're not invited, please leave," it had been the final straw. It wasn't just the rejection. It was the betrayal. The cake I'd baked for her, the extra effort, the love I had poured into everything I'd done for her, none of it meant anything. She wanted me to be a vendor, nothing more. Not family. Not a sister. And now, my parents were calling. I didn't want to answer, didn't want to hear their rehearsed speeches about forgiveness. But I couldn't ignore them forever. I reluctantly picked up the phone, bracing myself for their lecture. My heart pounded in my chest, still raw from the fight, and I wasn't sure how much more of this I could take. "Are you there?" My father's voice came through, thick with the weight of judgment. "Yeah," I said, my voice tight. I swallowed hard, trying to keep the emotions in check. "I'm here." "I've been thinking," he continued, his tone softer now, like he was choosing his words carefully. "We've been hard on you. And, you're right. We should have listened better." He paused, as if unsure how to continue. "We didn't understand how much Rebecca's actions hurt you. We didn't really see how much it took for you to finally snap. We were wrong about that." The words hit harder than I expected. I wasn't used to hearing them admit they were wrong. I don't know what I expected from her," I murmured, running a hand through my hair. "I thought she was different. I thought she saw me, you know? Like a sister. But I was just a convenience." "I know," my father said, and I could hear the regret in his voice. "But you didn't have to react the way you did. I understand why you were angry, but you humiliated her in front of everyone." That stung. Humiliated her? I couldn't help but scoff. She humiliated me first. You didn't see the look on her face when she told me to leave. You didn't feel the sting of being discarded after I gave her everything. "I'm not saying she was right," my father replied, the frustration in his voice barely contained. "But we're a family, and we need to handle things like one. What you did, that wasn't the way." My heart beat faster. The words they were saying, things that made sense on paper, felt like nails in my chest. But they didn't understand. They didn't get it. "And what do you want me to do now?" I spat out, frustration building with each passing second. "Apologize? Is that it? After everything she did? After all that's happened? We want you to fix this. We want you to be a family again," my mother's voice joined in, soft but firm. A bitter laugh escaped me. "A family? Do you honestly think that's still possible after everything?" "I'm not saying it will be easy," my mother said, her tone almost pleading now. "But we need to talk to Rebecca. We need to get past this." I could feel the pressure building, a storm swirling inside me. I was torn between the overwhelming need to fix everything and the desire to never speak to any of them again. "Fine," I said after a long pause. "Fine. But don't expect me to apologize to her. I'm not going to grovel. She can keep the money, and I'll move on with my life." There was silence on the other end for a moment before my father spoke again, quieter now. "I understand. We'll give you some time." We hung up. I sat there, staring at the screen of my phone, the words "I understand" echoing in my mind. It was like they were trying to fix everything with a few simple words. But there was no fixing it. Not with Rebecca. Not with me. A week and a half later, the check came in the mail. I stared at the envelope in disbelief, my hand trembling slightly as I ripped it open. There it was, the payment. But there was a note inside. I've deducted what I think is necessary because of your behavior at the party. I felt my blood boil. I read those words over and over, each time they burned a little more. She still couldn't see it. She still couldn't understand. My face flushed with anger, but I forced myself to take a deep breath. Whatever, I muttered under my breath. I'll let it go. It wasn't worth the fight. Not anymore. I didn't need her, and I didn't need the money. I'd gotten what I needed, a lesson in not caring about people who only wanted what they could take from you. Rebecca's wedding came and went. I wasn't invited. Not that I would have gone. My parents went. They had fun, I suppose, but they didn't mention it much. I didn't ask. They didn't offer. And I think that was for the best. It's funny how things can go from family to strangers so easily. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was apathetic. I still thought about Rebecca sometimes. I wanted to wish her well, but the truth was, I was just done. Done with her, done with pretending that she was ever my sister. I had people who treated me like family, people who actually saw me. And in the end, that was all that mattered. My business was thriving. My relationship with my parents was settling into a new rhythm, less expectation, more honesty. And Lana, she had been there through all of it. She'd proven that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when you need them, not the ones who walk away. So, no. I didn't need Rebecca. I didn't need her wedding. I didn't need any of it. But if she ever figured out how to stop pretending, maybe we'd talk again. Maybe. But honestly, I didn't care. I was fine without her. And that was enough. Days passed, then weeks. It became easier to breathe without the weight of Rebecca's betrayal hanging over me. But something unexpected started to settle in, a quiet sort of relief. A realization that, sometimes, the people who are meant to be in your life just aren't. I stopped thinking about the money. I stopped wondering what could have been different. Life kept moving forward, and so did I. My business flourished, my relationships grew stronger, and the more I let go of what wasn't meant for me, the clearer my path became. Lana checked in on me regularly, as always. She had this way of making everything feel lighter, even when the world felt heavy. And my parents? They'd stopped trying to play mediator. Our relationship had become something new, more honest, less about what we should do, and more about just being there for each other, however that looked. Then one day, out of nowhere, I heard from Rebecca again. A text, short and simple, "I'm sorry for how things ended. I've been thinking a lot about what you said." I stared at the screen for a long moment, the words flickering in front of me. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said." It felt like the smallest sliver of recognition. Maybe it was too little, too late. But it was enough to make me pause. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to just move on, pretend that she never reached out. But then another part of me, the part that still wanted to believe in reconciliation, considered replying. Maybe we could find a way to rebuild something. Or maybe not. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let myself sit with it. Let myself feel whatever came up. I'd learned to give myself that space now, to not rush into decisions out of guilt or hope or anything else. And just like that, I knew. I knew that whatever happened next, whether we spoke again or stayed strangers, it wouldn't break me. I had more to offer myself than anyone else ever could. And maybe that was the most important thing I'd learned through it all, that my peace, my worth, didn't depend on the approval or forgiveness of anyone else. So, I let the text sit there, unanswered for the time being. It didn't matter. What mattered was the freedom I'd found in choosing myself, even if it meant saying goodbye. And for the first time in a long time, I felt okay.